Hello, my friends. Welcome back to my channel. I'm so happy to see you here today. In this video, we are going to learn English with a special technique called shadowing. Now, you might be wondering what shadowing is. Let me explain. Shadowing is when you listen to someone speaking in English and try to repeat what they say exactly how they say it. It helps you improve your pronunciation, intonation, and even your listening skills. It's like being a shadow, following every move. Here's how you can use this video to practice. First, listen to me as I read a story. All the words will appear on the screen, so you can follow along. Then, try repeating after me, copying my tone and rhythm. It's okay if you don't get it perfect the first time. Practice makes progress. Before we begin, I want to tell you why I chose this story. It's something I heard recently, and I thought it would be perfect to share with you because it's both interesting and useful. Today's story is about Sarah, a young woman who traveled to the United States for the first time. The story is written in clear, easy English, so you can focus on understanding the words and practicing your speaking. Here's what we'll do. I'll read the story slowly and clearly, and you can follow the words on the screen. Later, you'll have a chance to repeat the sentences with me. This is a great way to practice your listening, speaking, and even reading skills, all at the same time. Are you ready to hear Sarah's story? Let's begin. Sarah's story. I am at the airport right now, and I feel so excited. Today is the day I am flying to New York City for the first time. I have my ticket, my passport, and my bags. Everything is ready. I arrive at the check-in desk and hand my ticket to the lady. She smiles and says, "Here is your boarding pass. You are in seat 17A. Have a good flight." "Thank you," I say. A window seat perfect. I love looking out of the window when I fly. I go through security, and it takes forever. The line is so long, but I finally get through. Now I am at gate 23, waiting to board my flight. After some time, I hear the announcement. Flight 567 to New York is now boarding. Please line up by group number. My heart races. This is it. I get on the plane and walk down the aisle, looking for my seat, 17A. When I reach my row, I stop. Someone is sitting in my seat. It is a man in a blue jacket, and he is looking out of the window. I feel nervous, but I say, "Excuse me, sir. This is my seat." He looks at me, surprised. "Oh," he says, "are you sure? Let me check my ticket." He pulls out his ticket and looks at it. He says, "My ticket says 17A. I think this is my seat." Now I am confused. I pull out my ticket and show it to him. "See, my ticket says 17A. I say confidently. He looks at my ticket, then looks at me. He smiles kindly and says, "Okay, no problem. You can take the seat. I'll sit in the middle." I feel a little bad, but I really want the window seat. "Thank you," I say as I sit down. The plane takes off, and I look out the window. The clouds are so beautiful. I feel happy and relaxed. Now the man next to me starts a conversation. "Are you going to New York for vacation?" he asks. "Yes," I say. "It's my first time. I want to see Times Square and the Statue of Liberty." "That's great," he says. "I live in New York. You'll love it. It's a busy city, but it's full of life." As we talk, I notice something strange. He doesn't seem upset about losing the window seat. He is calm and even friendly. After a while, the flight attendant comes by. She looks at me and then at the man. "Excuse me," she says, "but I think there's been a mistake." I freeze. "What mistake?" I ask. The flight attendant looks at my ticket. Then she looks at the seat numbers. "You are in the wrong seat," she says. "What?" I ask, confused. "The seat is 17A, and it belongs to this gentleman," she explains. "Your seat is actually 17C, the aisle seat." My face turns red. I look at the man, and he just smiles. "It's okay," he says. "I don't mind the middle seat." I feel so embarrassed. All this time, I thought I was right, but I was wrong. I should have been sitting in the aisle seat. "I'm so sorry," I say to him. "You were right all along." "Don't worry about it," he says with a laugh. "Mistakes happen." For the rest of the flight, I can't stop thinking about how kind he is. He didn't argue or get upset. He just smiled and let me have the seat. As the plane lands, I thank him again. "You are very kind," I say. He just laughs and says, "Enjoy New York, and next time, double check your ticket." When I leave the plane, I feel a mix of emotions: embarrassment, gratitude, and relief. This trip is already teaching me something important. Sometimes it's okay to admit when you're wrong. Teaching so, what can we learn from Sarah's story? First, always double check your ticket. It's a simple step, but it can save you from a lot of confusion. Mistakes like sitting in the wrong seat are easy to make, especially when we're feeling excited or nervous. But here's the most important lesson: mistakes are okay. Sarah thought she was right, but she wasn't. Instead of getting upset, the man showed kindness and patience. This teaches us that being kind to others, even in small situations, can make a big difference. Learning English is just like this journey. Sometimes we make mistakes, and that's okay. Mistakes help us learn and grow. The important thing is to keep trying and stay positive. Every small step you take in learning English is a step closer to reaching your goals. Now, I want you to think about this. What would you have done in Sarah's situation? Would you have switched seats or insisted on staying where you thought you belonged? Let me know in the comments. Vocabulary section. Now, let's look at some useful phrases and vocabulary from Sarah's story. These are words and expressions you can use when you travel or even in daily life. 1. Useful phrases at the airport. Excuse me, this is my seat. Use this phrase if someone is sitting in the wrong seat. Let me check my ticket. A polite way to confirm your seat or other travel details. Have a good flight. A friendly way to wish someone a safe and pleasant trip too. Vocabulary for travel. Boarding pass. This is the ticket you need to get on the plane. Window seat, middle seat, all seat. These are the 3 types of seats on a plane. Security check. The process where airport staff check your bags and ID. Gate. The area where you wait to board your flight. 3. Phrases for polite conversations. Don't worry about it. A kind way to say that everything is okay. Mistakes happen. A comforting phrase to remind someone that it's normal to make errors. Enjoy your trip. A positive way to wish someone well on their journey. Practice time. Let's practice some of these phrases together. Repeat after me. Excuse me. This is my seat. Let me check my ticket. Don't worry about it. Mistakes happen. Great job. Remember, these phrases are very useful when you travel. Try using them the next time you fly, or even in other situations where you need to speak politely. Thank you so much for practicing with me today. I hope you enjoyed Sarah's story and learned something new. Remember, you can watch this video as many times as you want to practice your shadowing. Repeating the story will help you improve your pronunciation, rhythm, and confidence in English. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe. Before we go, let me leave you with this. Learning English is not just about words and grammar. It's about connecting with people, just like Sarah did on her trip. So keep practicing, stay curious, and enjoy the journey. See you in the next video.
The morning sun cast identical shadows of 2 women walking in opposite directions on the streets of Lagos. They were mirror images of each other, yet they hadn't spoken in 10 years. Chimdi and Cami, twin sisters who shared the same face but lived completely different lives, had mastered the art of avoiding each other in a city that constantly tried to bring them together. Chimdi spent her mornings in her architecture firm's office, surrounded by precise drawings and careful measurements. Her desk was always organized, each pencil in its proper place, each blueprint carefully rolled and stored. She wore crisp business suits and kept her hair in a neat bun, taking pride in the order she had created in her life. When clients visited her office, they often commented on the string of awards hanging on her wall, each one a testament to her disciplined approach to success. Meanwhile, across town, Cami was already on her 3rd business meeting of the day. Her free spirit showed in her colorful dresses and the wild curls that framed her face. She moved between her various business ventures with the same energy that had driven her since childhood. turning every opportunity into a successful enterprise. Her office was a converted art studio, with bright paintings on the walls and beanbags instead of chairs. Where Chimdi built structures that reached into the sky, Cami built networks that spread across the city. People who knew them often wondered how two women who shared the same face, the same birthday, and the same childhood could become such strangers. The answer lay buried in their past, in a night at church when they were 16, but neither sister spoke of it. They had built their separate lives like walls between them, brick by brick, year by year. Their father watched this divide grow from his hospital bed, where he lay dying. He knew his daughter's stubbornness well. It was perhaps the only trait they still shared. As he looked at the family photo on his bedside table, taken when the girls were young and still inseparable, he made his final decision. He called his lawyer and began to write a letter. The news of their father's death reached both sisters on the same rainy Tuesday morning. Chimdi received the call while reviewing building plans, her hand freezing mid-sketch. Cami heard it while closing a business deal, her usual confident smile fading for the first time that day. Neither sister knew that at that exact moment, they both looked out of their windows at the same gray sky, fighting back the same tears. The lawyer's office was cold and formal when they arrived for the reading of the will. The sisters sat as far apart as the small room would allow, each pretending the other didn't exist. But their father had left them no choice but to acknowledge each other. His last wish was simple yet impossible. The twins had to live together in their childhood home for 3 months. The reward? The truth about their mother, a mystery that had haunted them since childhood. As the lawyer read the conditions, both sisters felt their carefully constructed worlds beginning to crack. Chimdi's logical mind raced to find a way out, while Cami's entrepreneurial spirit searched for a loophole. But their father had planned well. The stakes were too high to walk away. "This is ridiculous," Chimdi said, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. "I have projects to manage." "For once I agree," Cami replied, crossing her arms. "I have businesses to run." The lawyer adjusted his glasses and revealed the final piece of their father's puzzle. "If you leave today, you'll never know the truth about your mother." The words hung in the air like smoke, making both sisters catch their breath. Their mother had always been a mystery, a subject their father refused to discuss. Now, he was using that mystery to force them together one last time. In that moment, as they sat in the lawyer's office, neither sister realized that their father's final act would do more than make them confront each other. It would make them confront the truth they had been running from for 10 years. The walls they had built between them were about to come down, brick by painful brick. The old family mansion creaked with tension during the first week of their forced reunion. Chimdi claimed the first floor, while Cami took the second, each sister treating their chosen space like a fortress. The house that had once echoed with their shared laughter now rang with careful footsteps and deliberately closed doors. Chimdi woke each morning at exactly 5:30 a.m., her architect's mind already mapping out ways to avoid her sister. She would brew her coffee in silence, the rich aroma filling the kitchen just as the sun began to peek through the windows. By the time Cami usually stirred, Chimdi was already gone, leaving only the lingering scent of coffee and the ghost of her presence behind. Cami, true to her nature, kept no fixed schedule. Some days she worked from the house, her loud phone conversations drifting down the stairs and into Chimdi's carefully ordered world. Other days, she disappeared for hours, returning late with the energy of successful business deals still crackling around her. Each sister tracked the other's movements like a soldier monitoring enemy lines, always alert, always waiting. The housekeeper, Mrs. Adebayo, watched the twins with sad eyes. She remembered when they were young girls who finished each other's sentences and shared every secret. Now they communicated through her, sending messages back and forth as if they were foreign diplomats instead of sisters. "Tell her to stop using my coffee cups," Chimdi would say, her voice clipped and professional. "Inform my sister that they're our father's cups, not hers," Cami would reply, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. The inevitable explosion came on a Friday evening. Cami had invited what seemed like half of Lagos to a party, the music pulsing through the house like a heartbeat. Chimdi sat in her room, trying to focus on her latest project designs, but each bass note seemed to shake her pencil off the paper. The music wasn't just loud, it was an invasion, a deliberate disruption of the careful peace they had maintained. When Chimdi finally snapped, it wasn't just about the music. It was about 10 years of hurt, of birthdays spent alone, of achievements celebrated without her twin by her side. She marched up the stairs, each step fueled by a decade of pain, and entered the party like a storm. The guests fell silent as Chimdi crossed the room. They saw two identical faces, one flushed with anger, the other painted with defiance. When Chimdi reached the sound system and pulled the plug, the silence was deafening. Cammie's reaction was instant and fierce. The slap echoed through the room, but the words that followed cut deeper. "Don't you dare try to control me again. You lost that right 10 years ago." The guests watched in horrified fascination as the sisters faced each other, mirror images distorted by rage and hurt. They couldn't know that behind Chimdi's cold stare was the memory of a scared 16-year-old girl, frozen in place at a church. They couldn't see that beneath Cammie's anger was the wound of betrayal that had never healed. "Your party is over," Chimdi said, her voice steady despite the red mark blooming on her cheek. "Just like everything else you touch." The words hung in the air like poison. Cammie's guests began to leave, murmuring among themselves about the scandal they had witnessed. But the sisters barely noticed their departure, locked in a stare-down that spoke of years of unspoken words and untold truths. That night, as the mansion settled back into its uneasy silence, both sisters lay awake in their separate rooms. Chimdi pressed a cold compress to her cheek, while Cammie nursed a drink and her wounded pride. Neither could sleep, knowing that the careful distance they had maintained had finally been broken. In the darkness, each sister began to plot. Chimdi's mind, trained to see problems from every angle, started calculating her response. Cammie, who had built her success on taking risks, began formulating a plan that would hurt her sister where it would sting most. The housekeeper found broken glass in the kitchen the next morning. It was just the beginning, the first crack in the dam that would soon break, flooding their carefully separated lives with all the pain and secrets they had tried to keep at bay. The mansion, which had stood silent witness to their childhood joy and teenage tragedy, braced itself for the storm to come. The morning after the party, Chimdi stood in the driveway before dawn, her breath visible in the cool air. She watched Cammie's prized sports car gleaming under the fading stars, a custom-made masterpiece that her sister often called her baby. The sugar crystals caught the light as they fell from Chimdi's hand into the gas tank, like diamonds being scattered into a dark well. Each grain represented a moment of humiliation from the night before, a payment for the stinging slap that still burned on her cheek. "Let's see how you like being powerless," she whispered, though a small voice inside her wondered if she had gone too far. The architect in her, who lived by precision and careful planning, was being overwhelmed by something darker, more primal. Hours later, Cammie's scream of rage echoed through the mansion. She stormed into the living room, where Chimdi sat typing on her laptop, her face a mask of calculated innocence. "You did this," Cammie accused, her hands shaking with fury. "You destroyed my car." Chimdi looked up calmly, her voice cool as mountain spring. "Prove it." But they both knew. Just as they both knew this was only the beginning. Cammie's revenge came through the internet, swift and devastating. She had always been good with technology, and now she put those skills to destructive use. One by one, Chimdi's business emails disappeared, crucial contracts vanishing into digital nothing. She watched from her room as her sister paced downstairs, making frantic calls to clients and contractors. The war escalated. Chimdi installed Wi-Fi jammers, cutting off Cammie's lifeline to her business empire. Cammie retaliated by scheduling fake client meetings that left Chimdi waiting in empty coffee shops. Each attack grew more personal, more calculated to hurt. Then one morning, the doorbell rang. A handsome young man stood at the door, his eyes lighting up at the sight of Cammie. She didn't recognize him, but the way he looked at her made it clear. He thought she was Chimdi. In that moment, a plan formed in her mind, perfect in its cruelty. "I missed you," she said, taking his hands in hers. The man, Obuka, smiled warmly, completely unaware he was holding the wrong twin. Cammie played her part perfectly, letting him believe she was her sister, leading him upstairs with sweet words and gentle touches. The next morning, Kami sat in bed next to the sleeping Obuka, taking a photo that would shatter her sister's world. She sent it with a simple message: "Guess who spent the night with your man?" But Chimdi's reaction wasn't what she expected. When her sister appeared in the kitchen doorway, there was something different in her eyes. Not pain, but triumph. "Oh, Kami," Chimdi said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "You really should have asked who he was before you slept with him." "My driver says hello." The room spun around Kami as the truth sank in. She had been played, thoroughly and completely. Her sister had anticipated her move, had known she would try to hurt her this way, and had turned it against her. The humiliation burned through her veins like acid. "You're lying," Kami whispered, but she could see in Chimdi's eyes that she wasn't. "Go look outside," Chimdi suggested. "He's waiting to drive me to my meetings." Something snapped inside Kami at that moment. The careful dance of revenge they had been performing suddenly became too much to bear. Her hand found the kitchen knife on the counter, and before she could think, before she could stop herself, she lunged forward. The blade sank into Chimdi's stomach with a horrible finality. Time seemed to stop as both sisters looked down at the handle protruding from Chimdi's abdomen, neither quite believing what had just happened. "Kami?" Chimdi's voice was small, confused, like when they were children, and Kami had pushed her too hard on the swings. Blood began to seep through Chimdi's white blouse, spreading like a red flower blooming in snow. She staggered backward, her eyes wide with shock, before crumpling to the floor. The sight of her sister falling sapped Kami out of her rage. Horror replaced anger as she rushed forward, catching Chimdi before she hit the ground. "No, no, no," she sobbed, pressing her hands against the wound. "Please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." As she held her bleeding sister, screaming for help, Kami realized with devastating clarity that in trying to hurt Chimdi, she had committed the ultimate act of self-destruction. They were twins, after all, two halves of the same whole. In stabbing her sister, she had pierced her own heart as well. Obuka, hearing the screams, ran into the kitchen. The sight of his employer bleeding on the floor spurred him into action. As he called for an ambulance and helped apply pressure to the wound, Kami kept whispering apologies, her hands covered in her sister's blood, blood that was, in every way, her own. The hospital waiting room was a prison of white walls and antiseptic smells. Kami sat alone, her sister's blood dried brown on her trembling hands. The clock on the wall ticked away seconds that felt like hours, each moment a reminder of what she had done. Nurses and doctors rushed past, their footsteps echoing in her head like accusations. "What kind of person stabs their own twin?" she whispered to herself, staring at her blood-stained hands. These same hands had once braided Chimdi's hair, had held her sister through thunderstorms, had waved goodbye on the night everything changed. Now they were weapons that had nearly destroyed the other half of her soul. The memories she had tried so hard to bury came flooding back. She was 16 again, in that church, screaming for help while the pastor held her down. She remembered looking for Chimdi, expecting her sister to save her, only to see her standing there, silent and still. For 12 years, that image had fueled her hatred, her twin sister, watching and doing nothing. A doctor approached, his face carefully neutral. "Your sister is stable," he said. "She's asking for you." Kami's heart lurched. "She wants to see me? After what I did?" The doctor nodded. She was quite insistent. The walk to Chimdi's room felt like walking to her own execution. Each step was heavy with 12 years of hatred, confusion, and unspoken words. When she pushed open the door, she found Chimdi lying in the hospital bed, looking smaller and more vulnerable than Kami had ever seen her. "Cam," Chimdi said softly, using the childhood nickname that Kami hadn't heard in years. "We need to talk." Kami stood frozen in the doorway. "Shy, I'm so sorry. I never meant to." "Sit down," Chimdi interrupted, patting the edge of her bed. "There's something I should have told you 12 years ago." Kami sat carefully, afraid to disturb the tubes and wires keeping her sister alive. The irony wasn't lost on her. After trying so hard to hurt Chimdi, she was now terrified of causing her any more pain. That night at the church, Chimdi began, her voice trembling. I know you think I betrayed you, that I stood there and let him hurt you because I was on his side. Didn't you? Cammie's voice cracked. You just stood there shy. You watched him hurt me, and you did nothing. Tears began to roll down Chimdy's cheeks. A week before that night, the pastor showed me something. A mirror. He said it was blessed with dark powers. She paused, struggling with the memory. He called your name into it, and I saw your face appear. He told me if I didn't bring you to him, he would use it to kill us both. Cammie felt the air leave her lungs. What? I was terrified, Cam. I thought he really had powers. I thought if I didn't do what he said, we would both die. So I brought you there, and Chimdy's voice broke. When he attacked you, I froze. Not because I didn't care, but because I was paralyzed with fear. I've spent 12 years hating myself for being such a coward. The truth hit Cammie like a physical blow. All these years, she had nursed her hatred, built her life around it, while her sister had been carrying this burden alone. Why didn't you tell me? Cammie whispered. I tried at first, Chimdy said, but you were so angry, so hurt. You wouldn't let me near you. Then as time passed, it seemed easier to let you hate me than to explain how I had failed you because of my own fear. Cammie reached for her sister's hand, noticing how perfectly they still fit together. We both failed each other, shy. We let fear and pain drive us apart when we should have faced it together. 12 years. Chimdy murmured. We lost 12 years. But we're here now, Cammie said, squeezing her sister's hand. And I'm not letting go again. As they sat there, hands clasped in the quiet hospital room, the walls they had built between them began to crumble. The truth, finally spoken, was like a key unlocking all the doors they had slammed shut over the years. I missed you, Shy, Cammie whispered, tears falling freely now. Every success, every failure, every moment. Something was always missing because you weren't there. I missed you too, Cam, Chimdy replied. It's like I've been walking around with only half of myself for 12 years. Outside the hospital window, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of healing. The sisters watched it together, still holding hands, both understanding that while they couldn't change the past, they could choose a different path forward. So what do we do now? Cammie asked. Chimdy smiled weakly. We start over. We heal. Together this time. And in that moment, surrounded by the beeping of hospital machines and the fading light of day, the twins began the journey back to each other. One truth, one tear, one moment at a time. As Chimdy recovered in the hospital, the twins began to unravel the knot of their past piece by piece. The memories came back like old photographs, faded but clear enough to hurt. They were 16 again, young girls whose greatest joy had been their unshakable bond as twins. Do you remember how we used to dress exactly alike? Cammie asked, sitting in the chair beside Chimdy's hospital bed. Mom would get so confused. Chimdy smiled weakly. Until you started wearing your socks inside out. That's how she could tell us apart. The memory of their mother brought a familiar ache. She had passed when they were young, leaving them with a father who loved them, but never quite knew how to talk about her. Perhaps that was why the pastor had found it so easy to manipulate them. They were desperate for guidance, for someone to fill that empty space. Tell me about the mirror, Cammie said softly. It had been 3 days since Chimdy's revelation, but they hadn't spoken about it in detail. Some truths needed time to be told. Chimdy's hands twisted in the hospital sheets. It was after evening prayer. He called me into his office, said God had shown him something about you. Her voice trembled. He had this old mirror, covered in strange markings. When he spoke into it, I saw your face, Cam. Not like a reflection, but like you were trapped inside it. But that's impossible, Cammie whispered. I know that now, Chimdy said. But then, I was 16, grieving our mother, believing in anything that might make sense of our loss. He told me you were possessed, that evil spirits were using our twin bond to corrupt both our souls. Cammie reached for her sister's hand. And you believed him? He was a man of God. Chimdy's voice cracked. When he said he could save you, save us both, I wanted to believe him. He made me promise to bring you to the church that night, said it had to be during the new moon, when the spirits were weakest. The night itself came back to them both in vivid flashes. The empty church, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the dark. The pastor's voice, no longer kind but commanding. When he grabbed me, Cammy said, her free hand clenching into a fist, I kept waiting for you to help me, to say something, do something. Chimdi's tears fell freely now. I saw him push you down, start talking about demons. But all I could think about was that mirror, about losing you forever. I was so scared, Cam. So scared that if I moved, if I spoke, he would kill you with whatever power he had. I failed you because I was a coward. No, Cammy said firmly. You were a victim too, Shy. We both were. He manipulated you, used your love for me as a weapon. The truth of it settled over them like a heavy blanket. They had both been pawns in a cruel game, played by a man who had twisted their faith and love into tools for his own dark purposes. After that night, Cammy continued, when I ran away, why didn't you follow me? I tried to explain, but you wouldn't listen. You were so angry, so hurt. Then I saw you starting to build your own life, becoming successful, and I thought, Chimdi paused, wiping her eyes. I thought maybe you were better off without me, without the sister who had failed to protect you. And I thought you had chosen him over me, Cammy admitted, that you believed I was really possessed. Every time I saw you after that, all I could see was you standing there, watching. They sat in silence for a moment, letting the weight of 12 years of misunderstanding settle between them. We were just children, Chimdi finally said. Children trying to make sense of something terrible. And we let it break us, Cammy added. We let him win by turning against each other instead of standing together. The hospital room grew darker as evening approached, but neither sister moved to turn on the lights. In the growing shadows, they could almost see their younger selves, two girls who had once been inseparable, who had let fear and manipulation tear them apart. I wish I had been braver, Chimdi whispered. I wish I had listened, Cammy replied. All these years, Shy, all these years we lost because we couldn't talk to each other. But we're talking now, Chimdi said, squeezing her sister's hand. Maybe that's what matters most. As night fell over the hospital, the twins continued to talk, sharing memories both painful and precious. They spoke of their mother, of their childhood, of the years they had spent apart. With each word, each tear, each moment of understanding, the poison of that night at the church began to drain away, replaced by something they had both thought lost forever, hope.